everyone. We are here in Academy Day number 10, celebrating the 10th anniversary of this event, and I'm happy to speak with Daniel Flood from Melbourne, Australia, right? So to get this started, please give a short introduction about yourself and how you got into the architecture visualization business.
Yeah, I'm Daniel Flood. I do live in Australia. I come from Australia. It's good to be over in at one of these events in Europe. I have rarely had the chance, probably because I've had too many children, so I'm always having to look after them. But anyway, come over to this, and it's really good. It's good to to see all the work that's being done. I guess to answer your question, why I got into ArchViz is that I studied architecture. And when I was studying architecture, to be honest, I was pretty poor at designing plans. I managed to finish my entire master's equivalent without drawing a plan. And that was because I started using computers, at the very birth of making computers, in the 90s, the mid-90s. And from the point of where I sit is that the idea of critique, or understanding how you look at buildings and how you create visions of those buildings, it was important to me then as a student. And then when I graduated out of that, this, let's call it nascent new industry, appeared as an option, as opposed to building the reality. And whether or not that was about building other people's visions, or whether it was about generating our own ideas through the types of projects we looked at, well, that became a very interesting process. I actually think one of the other major good parts of it is that it's almost like a student lifestyle that continues. You get to, as opposed to being an architect, which is a very long period of time on your projects, was that I looked at this process of creating spaces and architecture and something that was a continual creative environment. And it's a very rare area to say that there is a continual creative environment that you work in, and that's why I got into ArchViz in the first place. But that was 20 years ago. Now, so now I stay in it because it is a large majority of my life, and I won't. I don't think I'll ever change that. Okay.
So you're quite a veteran of this industry. Can you tell us a little bit about the transition you've experienced over this duration of 20 years, like any kind of specific thing that is different today versus how it was 10, 20 years ago? And where do you see this going into the future, 10 years from now?
I think it's a very complicated question in the sense that there's been a lot of change, and maybe I would probably point out the changes that not everyone else would talk about. It's not so much the technology changes, and to be honest, I don't agree with most people. I would actually say that technology hasn't changed much. There's some plugins and some extra things that have been added, but really the growth generating render engines are still the same as what I was using in 2006. Obviously, they've improved. You've got other things that make that more effective, but on the whole, I'm still using Irradiance map passes for the most part in V-Ray or whatever other engine we're using. So in and of itself, has it changed that much? Well, probably not as much as other people say. I do think what I saw earlier today about how well the real-time stuff is moving is that does create a paradigm shift in the sense that I can see, even from that example that Neoscape showed, that what you're likely to see is the ability to design and narrative, or you can create animatic and those sorts of things in a much more intuitive way. And for example, the last video I played, for example, would I be able to create that out of that particular situation? Well, at the moment, not all the fluid dynamics and not all the the other types of things that appear in that. But was that just a matter of time? But in actual fact, cutting between different environments and different things, well, is that working in a linear editor, or is it work through a multi-phase process with different creatives and different that sort of stuff? Well, I don't know. I'm saying I see that presentation today, I would suggest to me, says that there's a very good likelihood that entire mechanism will change. Which if you'd asked me this question 6 months ago, I probably would have said no. And I think it's because I gave a talk at a BIM conference around about 5 months ago, and I started off the entire thing with a definition from Wikipedia. I like to try and make jokes, and I started with a definition of what is BIM from Wikipedia in front of 200 BIM experts. Apparently it's about one-touch solutions of designing buildings and implementing. I said, and so I asked you this question. Next slide was, why do I have a job? And I'll tell you why. It's because no one's interested in creating a one-touch outcome. But when you see this stuff, then you start seeing that perhaps it's going to come at one point. So yeah, I mean, I see it changing. Obviously the AI stuff as well, but half the reason why I make that comment about the CGI is because the human-generated image is the thing that creates the difference, and the question will be, well, which part of that ceases to be human or not. So I think there will obviously be some automation, but I think overall it's about us as an industry making sure that we keep control of the creative process. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about like what a typical day is in the office? How big is the team? Any kind of specific roles that you have that are unique to your studio versus other architecture visualization firms?
I don't think it's necessarily unique. I think there's a multitude of different types of studios out there. I guess in the sense that I think maybe why I made the point in the talk I gave, which was about the point of not being the brand design company or naming and driving that out. There's two reasons. One is you'd upset a lot of our clients if I did so, because they're brand companies. The second reason is simply that I like the inputs that go in there. So the reason why I say that as a starting point is because everything else that we do is pretty much in-house. So we have departments in the sense that all of our artists are pretty much generalists, but there is an animation department of people who specialise, and more interesting than that, are more interested in it. Okay, and I think that maybe that was something I myself didn't understand too well for a long time. Was I thought it was all interesting. So it was interesting that to understand that some people love a still and others love to do, say, real time, or they love to do animation. And understanding that means that we've got animation teams. We have in-house photographers. We have therefore in-house post. We have in-house a large group. There's about 48 of us at the moment. It does vary a little bit week to week. We're in 3 different locations: Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane. Melbourne's the home base. I'm obviously the managing director, but there's 2 other partners in the company. One's James Orchard, who I guess leads a lot of the stills and styling direction of how the company works, and the other being our cinematographer or head of the film department, who is a filmmaker. And I think that's key to explain, is that there is some specialisation in the leadership group about of what areas they're particularly good at, and I guess I sit there working with all of them, and that's how I like it.
So last thing I would like to ask is, when you hire a new artist, a new person to your studio, what is the main thing you look in a new hire?
Probably design, interest in creation more than it is the technical side of it. There's a place, obviously. I mean, by saying that, I would say I'm not going to say that a technically minded person is not a good person. You cannot survive in this in particular industry without people who are absolutely focused on, I like the work with settings, change the way that the various software works and things like that. But I guess I prioritise, in terms of keeping us at the level we are at in terms of creation, at the people who understand or look at creative interpretation of the work they're doing. And by that I mean things like designing the spaces, or designing or understanding how to fill spaces with life, whether it be with film assets or whether it be a model chair or whatever that is. So all those things about creation. I mean, at the end of the day, maybe in a longevity sense, going back to what I said earlier, it's those people who will most likely have the longevity in the career, because if it all does become increasingly more automated, then it becomes more and more likely that we'll all end up needing the people who are the creatives before, and that is and out of those ranks, it's always those people who usually come up and become the lead designers, if you like. Okay.
So thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next one.